The sun is finally out again, and it's a beautiful day in Southern California. The ancestors of the Indo-European people, or Aryans, looked up into the sky and saw a father, whom they called Dies Fatar, which literally means Father Daylight, a cosmic patriarch with authority over the realm of the daytime, and from where we get our word day, describing the solar phase for when the sun is visible. One common theme in Indo-European or Aryan mythologies, such as Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and Hindu mythology, is the presence of a powerful sky god or sky father. The name Dies comes from the Proto-Indo-European root word meaning to shine, alluding to a connection with daylight and the daytime sky, and in the role of a supreme deity and ruler over the gods. This can be found among the myths of the Vedic Indo-Aryans, Latins, Greeks, Phrygians, Thracians, Illyrians, Albanians, and Hittites. That said, many modern anthropologists might argue that the king of the gods would actually be the thunder god Zeus, also known as Thor or Jupiter, or possibly his mythological father Cronus, whom the Romans recognized as the god Saturn. So which is the supreme god of the Proto-Indo-Europeans? Is it the sun, or Dies Fatar, or is it one of the 5 visible planets? To further complicate the matter, we find that oftentimes the names for some of the planets and the sun are interchangeable. Today, no mythologist will contest the fact that Cronus was the Greek name of the planet Saturn. Yet Macrobius in the 4th Christian century identified Cronus as the sun. Diodorus Siculus, in discussing the names that the Chaldeans gave to the planets, also stated that at night, quote, the one called Cronus by the Greeks, they, the Chaldeans, called the star Helios. Diodorus explained that this was because Saturn was the most conspicuous of the planets. Conspicuous is defined as standing out so as to be clearly visible or attracting notice or attention. One reason for this is the duration of Saturn's orbit. Professor Morris Jastrow Jr., author of The Religion of Babylonia and Assyria, expressed the idea in these words, quote, strange as it may seem to us, the planet Saturn appears to have been regarded as the son of night, corresponding to Shamash as the sun of the daytime and the cause of such light as the night furnishes. It was argued that since there was a sun furnishing the light of day, so there must be some corresponding power which causes the illuminations of heavens at night. Saturn was chosen in preference even to the moon because of the slowness of its movement, which made it visible continuously for a long period. So while Helios is the name by which the Greeks called the sun, strictly speaking, this was not exactly an error on the part of Diodorus, for to the Chaldeans, Assyrians, and Babylonians, Shamash was a name which they bestowed on both the sun and the planet Saturn. In archaic copies of Plato's Timaeus, the word for the planet Saturn is Helios, the sun god. Popular Greek traditions identified Saturn as Chronos, alter ego of Helios, and Cronus is said to have ruled over the pole. Hyginus was an ancient Latin author in the 1st century who wrote that Saturn was called Sol and the star of the sun. According to R.C. Thompson, author of The Reports of the Magicians and Astrologers of Nineveh and Babylon in the British Museum, Volume 2, published in London in 1900, quote, in Babylonian astrological texts, it says that we learn from the notes written by astrologers that by the word sun we must understand the star of the sun, Saturn. This can become a bit confusing because the sun would often have different names depending on its different phases. So as strange as it may seem to us today, the planet Saturn appears to have been regarded as the sun of the night, corresponding to the solar deity Shamash as the sun of the daytime, and the cause of such light as seen by the celestial objects we see at night. In this regard, that since there was a sun furnishing the light of day, there must also be some corresponding power which causes the illuminations of the heavens at night. Saturn was chosen for one reason because of the slowness of its movement, which made it visible continuously for a long period, while Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, and Venus disappeared frequently during the same period, and the moon would vanish for several days at the end of each month, altering its phases, while Saturn was regarded as the steady planet, remained constant, at least for a long period, and so the light of the moon and the other planets and stars was at least symbolically and mythologically ascribed to Saturn. So understanding this concept of a supreme father deity or power source or light symbolically articulated and expressed through different names of objects depending on the different phases of time, season, or age, some of the ancient myths will make more sense. While some historians argue that the ancient Indo-European people worshipped the various names given to planets such as Mars, Venus, Jupiter, or Saturn, in actuality, they all represented the same universal light, and the individual cults and temples dedicated to certain planets corresponded to certain aspects of deeper religious philosophies, which are in modern times called the mysteries, and are no longer practiced in the open, but still survive in what is regarded as the occult. While the term occult sometimes brings up negative reaction in people that subscribe to modern Abrahamic religions, it simply implies hidden or secret, and whose understanding can help illuminate historical facts associated with the suppressed origins of those same religions. According to the New Testament, in the waning moments of his life, Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" In the Gospel of Mark, those were Jesus' final words. This cry of dissolution, as it is known, is theologically difficult for some to manage. But at the Turin National Library, near where the Shroud of Turin is kept, one important ancient copy of Mark has a different take entirely. In the oldest surviving Latin Gospel, Jesus seems to call out to the Sun God Helios instead. Though some manuscripts are ornate or difficult to read, the book in question, called the Codex Bobiensis, is refreshingly clear. The letters are even and is straightforward to follow. Some date the version of the Gospels in the book as early as the 3rd century, and given that there are no 1st century manuscripts of the New Testament, and there are only a few fragments that have survived from the 2nd, it is a very important text and earlier than the majority of Greek manuscripts. So this early manuscript describes those instances in the life of Jesus where the copyist has substituted the name of pagan deities, Helion, which is the solar deity, or sometimes Saturn, and Jove, which is Zeus or Jupiter, instead of the words for Eloi, which is the Aramaic for my God, and the word sheep. In an astrotheological context, the planet Saturn, which we have already established is interchangeable with Helios and considered the star of the sun, is mythologically the father of Zeus or Jupiter. And I invite anyone to fact check this on their own. Once this is understood, it should help broaden the oversimplistic notion that Jews are Saturn worshippers, as opposed to Aryans who are considered sun worshippers, as there's no difference, and Saturn is the star of the sun. That said, Baal worship, which we can see in the ancient Phoenician city of Baalbek, at the famous temple of Baalbek, adorned in swastikas, as well as what today is called the Star of David, refers to Jupiter, a planet that has a 12-year orbit and whose path along the sun's ecliptic is what we base our current 12 zodiac signs on, as Jupiter traverses the 12 constellations and why there are 12 months, 12 ages in the precession of the equinox, 12 labors of Hercules, 12 sons of Odin, 12 imams in Islam, 12 sons of Jacob in the Old Testament, and 12 disciples of Jesus in the New Testament. My point is that the Jews were not some small, remote desert tribe with a unique religion that got lucky and grew powerful through banking and usury, but are part of the same ancient religious mystery schools spread globally which dominated the Holocene and has been aberrated and historically misunderstood in modern times. Keep in mind that before being converted to Christianity, European Christians were called something, and the word pagan is simply a term first used in the 4th century by early Christians for people in the Roman Empire who practiced polytheism. I'll cover this topic in greater detail when I fully address the topic of lost tribes, so make sure you subscribe if interested. Early Christian manuscripts, such as the Codex Bobiensis, are used to support arguments for why in Latin and Spanish-speaking countries, Jesus' name is pronounced Jesus, which is claimed by some to mean Hail Zeus. Of course, this is considered blasphemous by most modern Christians, many of whom acknowledge that Jesus' real name was something else, and Christ comes from the Greek word Christos, meaning anointed one. Professor Matthew Larson of Princeton University, and author of Gospels Before the Book, says, quote, "As early as the 2nd century, we have evidence of Christians thinking about Jesus' death and resurrection in association with the setting and rising of the sun, and in the 3rd and 4th century, we see a blending of imagery of Christ and Sol Invictus. The person who made Bobiensis would not have been alone in incorporating sun god imagery into Christianity. He would just be the first to integrate that idea into Scripture itself." For modern Christians, the idea that Jesus or any early Christians believed in and spoke to Helios is deeply problematic. It's one thing to say that Christians utilize pagan iconography in the artistic depictions of Jesus, which they absolutely did. But the idea that Jesus called out to Helios in his dying breath is considered more challenging. Let me just close by pointing out that symbolically comparing Jesus or his resurrection to celestial cycles in the heavens does not negate a deeper esoteric message about spiritual salvation, which for the most part, in a practical sense, is hidden in what are called the mysteries. It is an oversimplification and therefore an error to only equate religion to moving patterns of the stars, missing the lost, forgotten, or hidden interpretations which they merely symbolically represent and have represented for many millennia, a lot longer than many would believe. My name is Robert Sepehr. I'm an anthropologist. My published work is available on Amazon. My books make a great gift. If you would like to support my work, you can do that through patreon.com. There should be a link in the description section for those who are interested. I appreciate it and thank you very much. Please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for future updates. As always, I look forward to reading your thoughts, so please leave me a comment below. Please have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you again soon.